How's it going, guys? My name is Graham and welcome to Two Left Frames. This is a video covering every reference used in the first Shrek movie. Something I personally didn't know is that Shrek is actually an adapted screenplay. Shrek the book was written in 1990 by American writer and cartoonist William Steig, with Shrek deriving from German and Yiddish origins meaning fright or terror. In the book there is an ogre, there's a donkey, they go on an adventure, that's about the extent of the similarities. The first movie's plotline at large, saving a beautiful princess from a hidden keep guarded by a sinister dragon, is largely mirroring Sleeping Beauty. The framing device used in the opening scene of Shrek reading from a book is also mimicking both Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella. Then, from its own opening, very memeable shot, we know that Shrek will instead be largely about going against the expected and subverting fairy tale tropes. Quickly looking at the outhouse door here, the crescent moon is something typically drawn on outhouses, but also reflects the DreamWorks logo. I had to look this up myself. These cutouts were to act as windows letting light in, but also were to help the illiterate. Moon doors were used for women's outhouses, and stars were for men. So in a likely somewhat unintentional little joke, Shrek is using the women's bathroom. Seemingly it's his only bathroom. The angry mob arriving with their torches and pitchforks, with Shrek himself directly describing this.
Grab your torch and pitchforks!
And the broken down windmill where we first see Fiona as an ogre, together work as references to the 1931 Frankenstein film, which somewhat differs from Mary Shelley's original story. Donkey flying with the help of Tinker Bell is similar to when Peter Pan first helps Wendy and the others fly. It also shares similarities with Dumbo, which technically came first and features a very similar scene, so either it's a reference to both or you can decide which one it more closely resembles.
You might have seen a housefly, maybe even a superfly, but I bet you ain't never seen a donkey fly.
When Donkey uses this line, he might be referring to the fact that superheroes fly, but he's more likely referring to the 1972 blaxploitation film Superfly. Starting with this scene and carrying on through the rest of the movie, we repeatedly meet fairy tale creatures. I'm gonna get them all out of the way at once here and not bother repeating them multiple times. We have Snow White and the 7 dwarves, Geppetto and Pinocchio, the 3 bears from Goldilocks, which there's more to talk about there later on. The 3 little pigs, which have different hats reflecting their different housing choices. A straw hat for the straw house, a construction worker's hat for the stick and lumber house, and presumably a foreman's hat with a trowel for bricklaying. Next is Peter Pan and Tinker Bell, the 3 blind mice, who have the honor of being the only on-screen nursery rhyme reference. We'll exclude the Muffin Man since he's never actually seen, in this movie at least, while every other referential character instead comes from a fairy tale, a legend, folklore, or some other story. There's the big bad wolf in Shrek's bed, the old woman who lived in a shoe, with her shoe in the background here that I somehow never noticed until now, the Pied Piper of Hamelin, the 3 fairies from Sleeping Beauty. It's pretty common for fairy tales to have things come in threes, hey? We have Gingy the gingerbread man, with him and Farquaad doing the Muffin Man nursery rhyme together during his interrogation, and that scene isn't referencing anything specific, it's merely pulling from various film and TV interrogation tropes. The magic mirror from Snow White, Cinderella and Snow White themselves are both in the mirror's little presentation, Robin Hood and his merry men, although this is more of an allusion to them than those direct characters, more on that later, and while the swamp is absolutely filled with fairy tale creatures, they seem to mostly be generic witches, gnomes, and wizards, and also a unicorn? He just randomly pops up in 2 different spots. Donkey's line,
Bam! They was tripping over themselves like babes in the woods. See that?
Babes in the Wood is a traditional children's tale. The actual subject matter is super dark, as were most original fairy tales, but the general idea of the expression still used today is to refer to any innocents who unknowingly stumble into a dangerous situation.
You a mean green fighting machine.
This is a reworking of Lean Mean Fightin' Machine from 1981's Stripes, starring John Candy and Bill Murray.
Are you talking to... me?
This is debatably a Taxi Driver reference since it's not directly parodying that original scene. I think it might simply be a similar line. Donkey's full of musical contributions to this film. He belts out Friends by Bette Midler, On the Road Again from Honeysuckle Rose, and Try a Little Tenderness by Otis Redding. The way Fiona sings to the birds directly mimics Snow White. I specifically remember after I got this DVD, I rewatched that in slow motion about 30 times in a row, crying and rolling around with laughter each and every time. These birds placing a cloak gently around Shrek's shoulders is also the same as Snow White. Now, there has been a lot of speculation that Farquaad was modeled to look like Michael Eisner, the then CEO of Disney. Shrek was produced by Jeffrey Katzenberg after he left Disney to found DreamWorks. He didn't leave on great terms, so people often assume that pretty much everything about Shrek's subversive plot, anti-Disneyness, anti-capitalism, and anti-fairy tale storyline was all done as a middle finger to Disney, so why not do the same with their villain? Although Farquaad's appearance, hairdo, and general attire all appear to resemble Shakespeare's Richard III, so drawing those connections to Disney may have been unintentional and something read in by fans. Few people can answer that except for Jeffrey Katzenberg. There's also some speculation that Farquaad's first entrance is meant to mimic Darth Vader's entrance. I wouldn't say they're that closely similar, but any visual analogousness there is certainly going to help establish him as the villain, and if you're going to pull from anything, you might as well go with a classic like Star Wars. The Magic Mirror presents the three princesses to Farquaad in a similar manner to the old TV game show The Dating Game. Even the 70s flower splatter wallpaper matches the original set's decoration. The mirror, stating that Fiona likes pina coladas and getting caught in the rain, is clearly a reference to the famous song Escape by Rupert Holmes. Either intentionally or coincidentally, that song is also predominantly used in another Cameron Diaz movie, The Sweetest Thing. But I think it was probably chosen for the ironic fact that while being parenthetically called the Pina Colada song, its actual title is Escape. Probably the major reason Fiona is drawn to that song herself. You are parked in Lancelot is just a great pun. You're in the Lancelot part of the parking lot, the Lancelot, the Lancelot, it works on so many levels. It's referencing the Knight of King Arthur's Round Table while also playing on Disneyland's use of famous characters to mark out sections of their parking lot. Really, all of Duloc is a mockery of Disneyland, so it fits that the parking lot would be no different. This flower bed with Farquaad's face is the same as what's done with Mickey Mouse's face in front of Disneyland. It's even done in a more caricature-like style, more reminiscent of Disney's animation style. Duloc's Perfect Place introduction song vaguely resembles It's a Small World After All. Lots of small puppeted characters singing an overly jubilant song about how everything's great and everyone gets along, with an earworm quality that's particularly irritating. The two heroes' arrival at the empty Duloc echoes number 6's arrival in the village in 1967's The Prisoner. The font on the village's sign and the building's architecture similarly draw from The Prisoner as well. Shrek came out only 12 months after 2000's Gladiator, but recording, re-recording, and rewriting things was not foreign to Shrek's development, so it is possible that the tournament was either added in or altered to be more Gladiator-esque. Once the fighting begins in the wrestling ring, Shrek chains together a bunch of real wrestling moves. A double clothesline, head scissors takedown, flying crossbody, a full Nelson hold, contributed to with Donkey's headbutt tag-in, although he wisely stays clear of the rest of the fight. I mean, he's still a donkey and they're knights. Just like WWE wrestling, there aren't really any rules here anyways. A seated senton launched from off the ropes, an Irish whip, a dropkick, vertical suplex, ankle lock, and kneeling pile driver, which is also the tombstone used by The Undertaker. That's about the only wrestling thing here I personally knew. A UFO, and of course, the classic chair. Something a Spanish Redditor pointed out, the luchador name for the seated senton is actually La Silla, which means the chair. And funnily enough, in the movie, there's a woman yelling, "Give him the chair," immediately after he performs La Silla. So there's a little bit of extra fun there for Spanish-speaking luchador fans. Unclear if intentional, but a cool little fact nonetheless. And at the very end, a donkey or mule kick is a technique used to break a hold in wrestling, but Donkey kind of made it into his own signature move. Now, this isn't a particular reference as far as I know, although "try the veal" is said in The Godfather.
Thank you very much. I'm here till Thursday. Try the veal.
Good. Try the veal. It's the best in the city.
I believe it is instead harkening back to old comedy clubs. In the 50s, an act or comedian might be booked for a week at a time. The more people a comedian brought in and the more sales during their set, the more likely they were to get steady work. At the end of your performance, if you let the audience know your schedule and try to upsell them with tips and an expensive cut of meat, that might be a great way to create some job security. Since clubs don't really book in this manner anymore, and don't really sell expensive cuts of meat, or anything more than basic pub food, comedians who say things now like "I'll be here all week," or "try the veal," do so in a mocking manner. They're somewhat pretending that they're an upscale comedian coming from a different era. Shrek is here kind of making a mockery of the whole thing, and using this type of language is really just layering it on top. The volcano they approach looks suspiciously like Mount Olympus from Hercules, but also like Death Mountain from Ocarina of Time, so maybe that's just how big ominous mountains are meant to look. Not a reference, but more of a explanation.
Believe me, Donkey, if it was me, you'd be dead. It's brimstone. We must be getting close.
Yeah, right, brimstone.
Brimstone is actually comprised primarily of sulfur. If you've never smelled sulfur, it smells a lot like rotten eggs or gas. I went to a trivia night a couple weeks ago, and one of the questions was what element is brimstone primarily comprised of, and I knew that thanks to Shrek. Donkey's line,
Whew, Shrek, did you do that?
Man, you gotta warn somebody before you just crack one off. My mouth was open and everything.
is Eddie Murphy actually being self-referential to his 1983 stand-up special Delirious when describing what he called the fart game.
You can walk up to your best friend while he's watching the football game and fart in his face. He won't even get mad. He just go, okay, you got me, all right. That was a good one, too. My mouth was open. My mouth was open.
This actually happens a few other times in the movie, with Murphy somewhat parodying himself.
You definitely need some Tic Tacs or something, because your breath stinks!
This one's less on the nose, but he says something quite similar in 1986's The Golden Child.
In my pocket, it's a whole thing of Tic Tacs. Take as many as you like.
And once more, Donkey claims to be,
Don't mess with me, I'm the stair master. I've mastered the stairs.
which is a line Murphy also used in 1996's The Nutty Professor.
I'm the Stair Master!
What large teeth you have is obviously Red Riding Hood.
Oh, what large teeth you have!
Interestingly, we never actually see it in this movie despite meeting the wolf. Makes you wonder if she's out doing her own thing since she's not a fairy tale creature, or if maybe the wolf had actually succeeded.
That'll do, donkey. That'll do.
I would say this is the line from Shrek that I easily quote more than any other on a semi-regular basis, and it is a very direct reference to Babe.
That'll do, pig. That'll do.
This bridge collapsing with everyone struggling to grab hold mimics the same scene from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Prince Charming is mentioned by Fiona, which at the time was a reference to the generic hero saving damsels in distress like Cinderella, Snow White, and Sleeping Beauty, although with the expanded lore of the sequels, it actually became a real character. Shrek using these emphatic air quotes was an homage to Chris Farley, who had recorded most of the dialogue to play Shrek before his untimely and tragic death.
Oh, this is another one of those onion things.
No, this is one of those drop it and leave me alone things.
Fellow SNL cast member and friend Mike Myers stepped in to complete the movie. Remember when I kind of joked about things being recorded and re-recorded? Mike had to redo everything Chris had done, who had nearly completed all his recordings from the movie. And then Myers did it again when he decided he wanted to do it with a Scottish accent. Despite rumors that this inflated the budget, Myers did this third take on his own dime and time, since it was his own creative choice.
Look, there's Bloodnut, the flatulent. You can guess what he's famous for.
Bloodknock was a character in the 1950s BBC comedy radio program The Goon Show. A running gag with the character was that he had gastrointestinal problems, and his entrances often were accompanied by booming flatulence. I said I'd come back to the three bears. We saw them at the top of the film. We briefly see Pa and the little one together, before seeing Mama as a rug on Farquaad's floor. So I guess not all the fairy tale creatures made it out okay. Farquaad is really earning his name here, with the intended joke being there that his name sounds an awful lot like Farquaad. There's some pretty shady dealings going on in the kingdom. Peter Pan is trying to sell Tinkerbell, Geppetto is trying to sell Pinocchio. Come on guys, look out for one another. Our Mama Bear rug could itself be seen as a reference to the fact that Disney killed off the mother character or had them mysteriously already missing in so many of their movies. Botticelli's The Birth of Venus is recreated over Farquaad's bed with himself featured as Venus. And behind Farquaad's fancy king and queen dressing gowns we also see a Tudor and Hennin hat, both classical headwear commonly used to depict Romeo and Juliet. Who's to say this guy isn't a romantic after all? Although he does seem to be getting ready for some alone time here? Romantic, right? Monsieur Hood, notably not Robin Hood as this character is distinctly French, shows up looking like Errol Flynn's 1938 portrayal. He and his merry men do the river dance and advance on them like one of the gangs out of West Side Story, and calls Fiona and Shrek Beauty and the Beast.
That's bad. When the beauty's with the beast, it makes me awfully mad.
Which, based on Fiona's transformation at the end of the movie somewhat mirroring Beast's final transformation, she kind of embodies the spirit of both Belle and Beast. As a little aside, there's this little wink of a joke that I personally missed all these years, in which Hood is cut off right before saying something a little bit less G-rated. Obviously not the only piece of adult humor in the movie.
He's basically saying he likes to get paid.
When Fiona fights back, she lets out a Xena warrior princess-like yell, before doing a Trinity-style 360 kick from the Matrix. She also punches someone over the shoulder like Steven Seagal, and does a ponytail whip not dissimilar to one Jackie Chan did a year earlier in Shanghai Noon. This leads me to believe that the other feats of athleticism shown in this fight are also referencing other bits of pop culture, I just don't know the specifics. The way Dragon scoops up and swallows Farquaad is almost identical to how the T-Rex does so in Jurassic Park. The transformation of the onion carriage as well as the blind mice is both a reference to Cinderella, but also somewhat self-referential with the inclusion of more
Onions!
My favorite part of this is that the three mice are actually seemingly still blind. Careful out there navigating those enchanted forests, guys. Gingy on one leg with a crutch and God Bless Us Everyone is one of the most overt references in the film, coming from Tiny Tim in A Christmas Carol.
God bless us, everyone! God bless us, everyone.
You can also see that his leg has been repaired with frosting, which carries forward through the rest of the franchise. One more list for good measure, the movie ends with a series of well-known dance moves like the Macarena, some b-boy breakdancing gyros and spins, and Donkey doing Angus Young's leg kick from AC/DC while singing I'm a Believer. Not a reference, but the big bad wolf appears to be dancing with a random knight, so apparently not all the knights hate fairy tale creatures the way Farquaad did? It's an interesting little thing that I never picked up on before, and may actually indicate that there's a gay relationship hidden within Shrek. It may also indicate bestiality, but I'm just going to go ahead and ignore the implications of that. Hey, and if you also happen to have the 2-disc special edition of Shrek, as you all should, it includes the Shrek karaoke dance party. We get renditions of Just the Way You Are by Billy Joel, Like a Virgin by Madonna, Baby Got Back by Sir Mix-a-Lot, Feelings by Morris Albert, YMCA by the Village People, Do You Really Want to Hurt Me by Culture Club, Stayin' Alive by the Bee Gees, Who Let the Dogs Out by Baha Men, Dance to the Music by Sly and the Family Stone, and Happy Together by the Turtles. And, luckily for the Bear family, Mama Bear appears to be alive and well here, so they had better hope for their family's sake that this DVD extra is considered Shrek canon. And with that, that is every reference in Shrek 1. My own motivation for making this video actually came from randomly watching Shrek 2 the other night. That movie is a lot less subtle with its pop culture references, and there is so much to look at there. So that is something I plan to cover down the line, but it will likely take a while to properly put together, because there is so much to dig through there. I had a lot of fun putting this together. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Considering that Easter egg and reference videos were some of the things that first allowed 2 left thumbs to get noticed, it seemed like dusting off this old video I never properly finished would be a great way to start off 2 left frames. Please stick around, there's plenty more reviews, retrospective, film analyses, video essays, and much more on the way. Quick shout out to the patrons of the channel, their support means a lot to me. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon.